Uhuru, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Boundaries. My name is Alex Morley, brothers and sisters. I'm the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Bahamas, and I'm also I head up the front for the African Socialist International for the Caribbean and the South American region. Uhuru, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Boundaries. We have a couple of reports that we have today, so again, I'm going to get straight into it. On Beyond the Boundaries, brothers and sisters, we bring you news from the African nation and from the international socialist movement. So there's a couple of reports that I'm going to get straight into, brothers and sisters. The Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is having a march and rally in Washington D.C., brothers and sisters, and we want you to come out for that. But that's the first report I'm going to be speaking about. It says turn imperial. The theme, the whole theme of this march and rally is turn imperialist wars into wars against imperialism. Turn imperialist wars into wars against imperialism. Stop the U.S. debt machine at home and abroad. Stop the U.S. debt machine at home and abroad. Now is the time to throw off all hesitation, open up new fronts of struggle, and to launch every protest, demonstration, and anti-imperialist action, from the ballot box to the barricades, as an act to deepen the crisis of imperialism. Every protest against police and white civilian murder of our people, every mass mobilization to demand the end to the cruel, bloody economic war against Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Cuba, Iran, Korea, and Russia must be seen as our part in turning the imperialist wars into wars against imperialism. The U.S. and all imperialist powers, new and old, must be expelled from Africa, and the U.S. domestic colonial occupation forces, known as police, must be driven out of our colonized communities as part of the struggle against colonialism and imperialism. Join the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations for our annual march on the White House in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd and November 3rd. For more information, brothers and sisters, we want you to check out www.blackisbackcoalition.org, or you can call 786-505-9859. Day one is a two-day event, brothers and sisters, on November 2nd and November 3rd. On day one is a march and rally. Day one will be held at the Malcolm X Meridian Hill Park. That's at 12 noon. That's on day one. Day two is the Thurgood Marshall Academy. That's 2427 Martin Luther King Avenue, Southeast, and that will be at 12 noon. And that's at 16th Street and West Street, New York. And then it's 2427 Martin Luther King Avenue, Southeast, Washington, D.C., 2001, United States. But that's day one and day two, brothers and sisters. So we got a march and rally happening in Washington, D.C., and as it says, every protest against police and white civilian murder of our people, every mass mobilization to demand the end to the cruel, bloody economic war against Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Cuba, Iran, Korea, and Russia must be seen as our part in turning the imperialist wars into wars against imperialism. So the whole theme of this event, brothers and sisters, this march and rally is turning imperialist wars into wars against imperialism. So we're asking everybody out there in the African nation, in the international socialist movement, to support this march and rally on November 2nd and November 3rd in Washington, D.C., brothers and sisters. And we'd ask you to go on the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace and Reparations. Check them out on Facebook for more information, but it's taking place on November 2nd and November 3rd, brothers and sisters. The second story, second report I have is from theburningspear.com, theburningspear.com. The title of the story from theburningspear.com is Our Standards of Party Life. Who are the members of the African People's Socialist Party? Who are the members of the African People's Socialist Party? And long live Comrade Omali Kefeng, brothers and sisters. He was a true comrade of the African People's Socialist Party. But the report says the membership of the African People's Socialist Party consists of the most advanced segment of the general African population. These are people whose social and political consciousness have placed them at the disposal of African people through their organized, disciplined involvement in the struggle for national liberation. African People's Socialist Party members are people who have voluntarily agreed to adhere to the strict discipline of the African People's Socialist Party based on their agreement with the party's program and their understanding of our need for a party that is unified in action. A person who comes into the party must abandon all the selfish individualism promoted by the ruling class, colonial bosses, and become a member of the African People's Socialist Party National Liberation Offensive, where all personal and individual interests are subordinated to the interests of African people as represented by the African People's Socialist Party. The solidarity of the members of the African People's Socialist Party is not based on feelings, beliefs, personal friendships, etc. The unity of the members of our party is based on the decision by members to unselfishly serve the cause of African liberation through active and conscious application of the scientific principles of African internationalism. It is a great thing to become a member of the African People's Socialist Party, to join with the millions of African and other oppressed people throughout the world on this historic march to freedom and human dignity. Such a great march demands real discipline and unity of action from all party members. One of the first guidelines in our standards of party life is the acceptance and understanding of the theory of African internationalism. It is only with full understanding and acceptance of our theory and ideology that we can develop the foresightness and patience necessary to make us into totally committed African freedom fighters. Education provided through party literature, political education classes, and accompanying suggested reading and the Burning Spear aids us in understanding our theory, history, present condition, thus giving us proper and practical information to allow us the ability to correct analysis of ours and other people's struggle domestically and internationally. Therefore, education, that of self-education, and that which is provided by the party is an essential part of party life and is a daily task that an African internationalist must carry out. A second guideline in our standard of party life is the total submission to our party constitution. The Constitution provides us with a basic guideline in the functioning of the whole party, setting restrictions, regulations, and rewards, which are vitally necessary for the effective functioning of the party as a whole. The party constitution provides for a party unified by specific principles and objectives. Total submission to our party constitution is necessary in order to provide the cohesion necessary to maintain a democratic centralist party, a party which provides democracy under centralized leadership. It also keeps us free of dishonest and disruptive elements. Central to this, the most important criterion of loyalty to our party and African freedom is the active fight for party policy. In order to achieve this, it is an absolute responsibility of party members to take part in discussions of party policy, be involved in self-criticism and criticism, and adhere to the rules of party discipline. In doing so, education plays a very instrumental part in that it allows for an educated membership capable of intelligently fighting for party policy. Party members, African internationalists, must adhere to party democratic centralism. Centralism means that our party has one program and unified rules. Democracy is the ability to vote on party policy and leadership. An important element of democratic centralism and party discipline is the unconditional subordination of the minority to the majority and of lower party organizations to the higher ones. A party member uses criticism and self-criticism only as a constructive means of correcting errors in order to strengthen the party. Never is criticism and self-criticism used as an excuse mechanism which does not correct but allows occurrence of the same backward errors in an attempt to pull the party down to the level of the same type of backwardness. An African internationalist must not implement policy mechanically, but with great political maturity. Study never ends and political growth is infinite. Discipline is also a very important aspect of party life. It is a voluntary process dependent upon commitment. The process of criticism and self-criticism helps in achieving and maintaining discipline. However, discipline cannot be forced discipline. The responsibility for living up to party discipline is dependent on the individual's commitment to adhere to the general party program and to learn from their mistakes. The party is a voluntary, self-sustaining organization. Therefore, a third function of party life is the timely payment of membership dues. Everyone who joins the party must regularly pay party dues, thereby providing material aid for the orderly function of the party. The payment of membership dues appears at first sight to be only an elementary duty of a party member. However, it has fundamental significance. If a person does not pay dues regularly, it means that they do not have respect for the party and lack discipline. A good party member must be creative, have initiative, innovation, and be flexible enough to meet changing situations. An African internationalist understands their historical responsibility to the party in its fight for a free, united, socialist nation of African people. To be an African internationalist is a great thing. It is not for everyone. African internationalists are the politically astute people of our dispersed nation. The disciplined soldiers of freedom, the energetic, the selfless fighters, the builders of a new society, the leaders of the African masses, these are the necessary qualities of African internationalists. The party is the leader and teacher of the masses. It elaborates the correct political line, defines tasks and directions of the political work of institutions, coordinates their work, and strengthens them with personnel. Only the party's leadership is capable of directing the work of struggle against U.S. colonialism and imperialism. The party must guard against choking the party with unstable elements and unsuitable people. A member of the African People's Socialist Party must have such qualities as theoretical development, knowledge of historical conditions, and the ability to analyze situations and conditions. Party members must be the most advanced sector of the African masses, which pushes forward all other Africans. Struggle to learn, learn to struggle. One people, one aim, one party, strike 1,000 blows for independence. So Uhuru, brothers and sisters, that's a story from the burningspear.com. Who are the members of the African People's Socialist Party? And I would ask persons to go on the burningspear.com and check that out to see who we are, what is it that we're fighting for, what we believe in. But check out the burningspear.com, brothers and sisters, to see what is it that the members of the African People's Socialist Party, the commitment that it takes to be a part of this organization. Brothers and sisters, we have another story. It's from another report, from Black Agenda Report. It's by Brother Usu Kayana. Usu Kayana. And he's a brother. I have never met this brother, but I know that this brother is worked with Elder Isu Kayana. I know that this is an elder who would have worked with Comrade Walter Rodney. So as soon as I saw this on the Black Agenda, I definitely had to give him that. Yeah, I definitely had to read his report. But the title of it is Hurricanes and Other Storms That Uprooted a People. Hurricanes and Other Storms That Uprooted a People, and it's on blackagendareport.com. It says, the majority of residents in the hurricane-prone countries of the Caribbean are there as a result of a Pacific centuries-long crime wave known as the Atlantic slave trade. This statement is a personal one intended to support opinions, especially in the Caribbean, that the cost of practical recovery from annual hurricanes should not fall, as they mainly do, on the victims of these natural disasters. As it is, the pain, the agony, the distress, the abandonment, the unpredictable fatalities, and other psychological cost of reorganizing and reestablishing their homes, their communities, and their livelihoods are borne logically by the residents of the hurricane-prone countries. It is the argument of this statement that the unfortunate victims should not be expected to bear the capital, recurrent, and other financial costs of rehabilitation after these more and more ruinous disasters. Before making recommendations, it is only fair to note that big-hearted, generous, and humane individuals and institutions of other countries, often with no relationship to the victims, have always been ready to organize and deliver critical items and services to relieve the extremes of our suffering. Our people will not forget these acts of generosity. In the case of the Bahamas, parts of which were devastated by Hurricane Dorian, the assistance of the U.S. Coast Guard was frequently noted in dispatches, an intervention which might have justly attracted the attention of the people of Puerto Rico. In a different mood, the United States civilian authorities received orders not to admit people in flight from the natural disaster if they could not present visas and passports. We now feel compelled once again as a responsibility to history to remind ourselves and the international community that the majority of the residents in the hurricane-prone countries of the Caribbean, such as the Bahamas, such as Bahamians, Barbadians, Haitians, and others, are there as a result of Pacific centuries-long crime wave known as the Atlantic slave trade. These Caribbean people are in the hazardous parts of these annual and all-powerful winds, now seen as growing in force and frequency as global warming increases. As a subset of the general demand for reparations, the claims in this statement made on European slave owning of powers of the past can be supported by repeating a selection of facts from world economic history. In the French Empire, Haiti produced more revenue for France than any other possession owned by that nation. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney has laid bare the process by which one continent enriched itself at the expense of another. Looking back at the Atlantic slave trade, Karl Marx wrote in his classic Inquiry that, that the entombment in minds of indigenous populations and the turning of Africa into a warren for the hunting of black skins marked what he called the rosy dawn of capitalist expansion. For a whole century, it was admitted that India was the most precious jewel in the British crown. Against this backdrop, this statement makes a very logical and human claim. The Caribbean countries randomly affected by hurricanes are populated by the descendants of people traded from the African continent without any semblance of their consent. As one African woman poet puts it, we had no part in it. You brought us in your ship. You beat us with your whip. To make the last consent more emphatic, any attempt of the enslaved to escape from the plantations were punishable under the slave codes. Just for time, brothers and sisters, I would ask persons to go on Counterpunch, to go on Black Agenda Report and read Brother Irisu Keyana's report. I think it's a good report, man. It hits the nail on the head in terms of these natural disasters, how we should approach the climate change issue, and history of African people in this region, what we have gone through. At the end of the report, it says that he is a native of Guyana living in Atlanta, Georgia. So I just want to say Uhuru out there to Elder Yana, who would have worked with Walter Rodney in the Working People's Alliance. But I would ask persons to go on the Black Agenda Report and read Elder Keyana's story about hurricanes in the Caribbean and the history, the global, the history that we need to look at these hurricanes within. Brothers and sisters, the third report is from Counterpunch and counterpunch.org. Forward a week of protests in Catalonia, and it's from Chris Gilbert. There's a lot of things happening in Spain right now, brothers and sisters. I'm just going to read a part of Chris Gilbert's story. It's from counterpunch.org. There's another, just before I read this story, on Black Agenda Report, check out the UAW strike, Blacks, Unions, and Capitalism by Ken Morgan. That's on Black Agenda Report. Check that story out too. That's UAW strike, Blacks, Unions, and Capitalism by Ken Morgan. But this story from counterpunch.org, brothers and sisters, is a forward a week of protests in Catalonia by Chris Gilbert. This week in Catalonia, the harsh sentences bestowed on the organizers of the 2017 referendum have sparked a week of protests, breathing new life into the region's independence movement. The second scenario might also open up a space for the leftist independence group to push forward a program that combines Catalan independence with social transformation. On the morning of Monday, October 14th, the Spanish Supreme Court made it known that the 9 politicians and social leaders who organized a referendum vote on independence 2 years ago were condemned for sedition and embezzlement and would be punished with 9 to 13-year prison terms. The first important response was a takeover of the Barcelona airport on Monday night, organized by the platform Tsunami Democratic. In subsequent days, however, the response quickly overtook the framework proposed by this secret platform, which appears to be concerted between a range of independentist forces. On Tuesday and Wednesday, there were confrontations in the center of Barcelona and other Catalan cities between protesters and the Mossos, the body of local militarized police. This caused some leaders to take distance from the protests or at least their form, whereas leftist groups such as the Adavant and Aran called for a push forward toward a feminist and socialist republic. The overall situation is capable to leftist independence forces in as much as the Catalan bourgeoisie is divided and relatively unprepared to channel the movement in its favor, as the Basque bourgeoisie has done with such success in its own context. However, the independence left suffers from being a small minority in the overall movement. It is also limited by Catalonia's long-standing ultra-democratic political culture. Brothers and sisters, because of time, I can't read the rest of it, but is a good report. Go on counterpunch.org and check out Chris Gilbert's story about what's happening in Catalonia, what's happening in Spain right now. On another episode, we're going to try to put just the European struggle in find out where African people lie within the struggle, or what do these struggle mean to African people all around the world. And I think Africa, Africa and African people played a lot in bringing the peoples of Europe together and consolidating the African people. And slavery and colonialism played a big part in consolidating the European identity. All of those countries in Europe, bringing all of those countries together, the consolidation to bring those peoples together was slavery and colonialization. That was the process. So Africa and its people have a part to have a have a role to play in what's going on, and our understanding of the balance of power, how the forces the balance of power is changing in the world right now. And even for the very the European identity itself, it's white power. European identity itself is breaking up in parts of the world, but we just want to be able to, as African people, to properly understand where every national and democratic struggle is happening in the world, the part that African people and the socialists, where we fit into this. So, brothers and sisters, on another time we can talk a little bit more about that. But from the art and culture world, brothers and sisters. So that's the three reports that I wanted to talk about on this week on Beyond the Boundaries. From the art and culture world, I see that Pastor Marion Hall may be having, I think she's having a restoration for the Bahamas, a concert coming up on November 15, 16, and 17. It's supposed to be a soca, reggae, and gospel concert. Soca, reggae, and gospel concert. For people who don't know past Minister Marion Hall, if she don't mind me calling her Lady Saw, also known as Lady Saw, and that's no disrespect, of course. Also known as Minister Marion Hall, that's her title. She was a big influential in the 90s in terms of the soundtrack for the 90s, Lady Saw. So, but she's having an event for the Bahamas coming up on November 16th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. So check out for that, brothers and sisters, Minister Marion Hall. And then I got two legends, Arsenal and we still talking art and culture. Arsenal and Charlie Clips, two legends from the battle rap world, having check out Art Florida Movement. The Art Florida Movement. They're having a battle on November 16th. 8 battles, 1 round, 3 minutes, and the 3 guest judges, K Shine, DNA. I know K Shine and DNA will definitely be there. Brothers and sisters. So that's from the art and culture world. Let's check out the New Florida movement. From the sports world, brothers and John the Don. I don't know why I couldn't say that word for some reason. John the Don. I couldn't get that word out. You know what I mean? But anyway, John the Don, K Shine, and DNA. That's the three judges who will be there. But check out the Art New Florida movement. From the sports world, brothers and sisters. I guess, last week I spoke a little bit about the China issue, and I ain't gonna speak about that anymore. I didn't even know it was such a big issue, to tell you the truth. And then what they trying to do to LeBron, you know what I mean? But that's how it is. When you stand out on principle, sometimes you look back and nobody be behind you. You see, because if the NBA had a problem with the Chinese government, and when you go into China, you're doing business with the Chinese government. If they had issues with the Chinese government, well, they should have made those issues known when they were signing those $1 million contracts. You see, that's when they would make. You don't sign contracts with people and then turn around and say something else. If you are anti-imperialist, then you let people know that you're anti-imperialist so that they can make their relationship with you based on what you are. You see. But one small thing I want to say about this: the government who's in terms of how imperialism works. Check this out: the government who's in power right now, when they were in the opposition, right? And both of these governments have done this at some point. They allowed Chinese workers they accepted money from the Chinese government, right? So they accepted the money from the Chinese government, and but when they were in opposition, imperialist forces gave them money to build up an anti-sentiment Chinese thing in this country. So there was a march where persons had anti-Chinese placards, and the imperialist forces, white imperialist forces, are actually giving the government, the opposition, monies to push that anti-Chinese sentiment. But this was the same opposition government forces who had accepted monies from the Chinese at one point. Brothers and sisters, my point is capitalism ain't have no principle, man. Capitalism ain't have no principle. So black people gotta see these things for ourselves. And you know what was so interesting about that? After when this government came into power, one of the first things that they did, the people who gave them monies to build up the anti-Chinese sentiment in this country, the next